All right, we're back with another Floorball interview. I'm here with the one and only Reagan. How are you doing today?
I am a little tired. I was just telling you about my shenanigans this weekend, but I'm doing good and I'm happy to be back in New York City.
I'm impressed that you made it on your flight to New York, by the way. Very impressed.
I'm also impressed.
I want to start off by asking, so this was an office debate today of how you pronounce your name.
You guys don't know?
And people are going back and forth. And so I just decided I'm going to ask you, how do you pronounce your name?
What was...
Reagan.
Where did it lean? I need to know the percentage.
It leaned more Reagan.
Oh, thank God. Yeah, it's Reagan.
Okay.
Like Ronald Reagan.
So what do you get that a lot?
Yes.
Because it's the way it's spelled?
Yeah, people call me Regan all the time.
I can imagine. So, yeah, I don't know who started it, but Jimmy just walked into the live stream and was like, how do you say her name? And I was like, she would have corrected us if we said it wrong. Like,
well, sometimes I don't correct people.
And you just kind of like, cool.
Yeah, I'm like,
fine.
I get what you're saying.
Whatever, fine. Okay, now let's start into the actual interview. Okay, who are you?
I am Reagan Rust, to start. I'm originally from Mississippi, played hockey my entire life. I started playing down in the South, played up in Pittsburgh, then I went to play D1 at RIT, transferred to BU. I've been playing the past 4 years pro, so I was in Boston 1 year, I went to Budapest, Sweden, and then most recently here in New Jersey area.
That's crazy. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. How did you get into the sport? Because I grew up in Tennessee, you grew up in Mississippi?
Yeah.
And that's not a big thing down there. Ice hockey is not heavily pushed, especially to women. So, like, how did you even get into that?
We had one rink in the entire state. Now there's two. So
there's only two in the entire state?
We've doubled the amount of rinks in Mississippi since I left.
If you say that sentence, it sounds like a really impressive thing, and then you're like, no, 1 to 2. It's crazy.
Yeah, so we started down there. My aunt actually started going to some of the Memphis River Kings games, and she started bringing me and my oldest sister, and then I think after that first season that we started watching them, they were like, oh, you guys should come out. There's going to be so many girls. It's going to be so fun. We just started this rec league. We're like, yeah, let's do it. Yeah. And then we show up, and it's me, my sister, and one other girl, and 30 boys.
Love that.
Per usual. And then we played in Mississippi for 5 years and just started traveling from there.
Nice. And so is it kind of similar to like an AAU type of basketball or travel baseball where you obviously have like club or rec, and then you have like the one where you travel where you're seen by scouts and whatnot, right?
Yeah, it kind of all goes into one. We just call it travel hockey or AAA, AA, something along those lines. So when I was in Nashville, that was AA hockey, which is the second tier. Mm-hmm. And then you get into AAA hockey, which is tier 1. That's like the best you can be at. Mm-hmm. And I played that from like 8th grade on. Okay.
Wow. So basically what baseball fans know as like minor leagues, you can start before you graduate high school. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so whenever you were playing in high school, I personally remember myself as a middle school and high school girl, and I was already uncomfortable and awkward and cared way too much about what people think. So how did you kind of combat, I'm sure a lot of people were like, why are you doing this? Why are you even playing? So how did you kind of combat that and navigate that and continue to pursue it, something you love?
Yeah, it was actually kind of interesting playing that sport because me and my sister, we played so many sports together. I was in 5 or 6 different ones when I was in middle school and high school, and she did very similar stuff. Yeah. And everyone always knew me as a hockey player. They thought, oh, you're the best hockey player we've ever seen. I was like, you've never seen me play hockey?
It's like,
I was like, there's no hockey for you to see down here. And I think I struggled a little bit just because like I didn't have a lot of role models that were female growing up because women's hockey wasn't really televised like that. But I definitely got questions from my family like, oh, like, what do you want to do with this? I was like, I want to go D1.
Yeah,
like,
and it's like, okay, but like, what are you actually going to do? I remember that question,
And I was like, I mean, pro hockey at some point. And they're like, that's not a thing. I was like, I'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. Yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Yeah. So what was the recruitment process like in you went to 2 different colleges for hockey. So what was the difference between those two and the recruitment process and just being a college athlete? Because I know it's a job. It's a full-time job.
Oh, yeah. It is a full-time job for sure. But when I was getting recruited my 10th grade year, or like right after my 10th grade year, I actually wasn't getting really any offers.
Really?
From any D1. So I had probably 5 or so D3. So I started visiting those types of schools. And then I ended up going, I ended up going and switching to defense when I'm normally a forward. And so I was in like my recruiting summer going into my senior year, uncommitted. And as I played that one game as a defenseman, I was very offensive. And I ended up getting recruited to play D1 to RIT just from that one game. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, it was wild. Then he DM'd me on Twitter. So
that's how you got recruited?
That's how I have the Twitter DMs too still. But yeah, that's how I got recruited to play at RIT. RIT was a very low Division I school, so like bottom 5 out of 35, 40.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But they were national championships in D3, so I thought that it would be, pretty competitive still regardless. And then when it came to BU, I had played my first 2 years at RIT. We weren't very good. The culture wasn't that great. And so I was like, all right, how do I get out of here?
Yeah.
So I was either going to go play D3 or try to play D1 at a different school, but I knew that would be a little bit challenging. And I ended up reaching out to some coaches that had coached me when I was in 9th grade, and they connected me to BU. And then a girl that was supposed to come in that year, that was a defenseman, ended up not being able to go.
And that's how it worked out?
And that's how I got all my scholarship and everything paid for.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So basically you use your connections essentially and like weaseled your way into a spot that like opened up magically. It worked out, as you told your parents. It worked out.
It worked out just as it was supposed to.
So I run into this a lot whenever I'm talking to different people who play sports, whether it's growing up or professionally, is that they always kind of come head to head with a moment, especially in college, when they question whether or not they want to keep playing. And so when you were at that first school and it wasn't a good culture, you weren't very good, was there ever a question of, okay, is this it type of thing?
Yes, there definitely was, because I was also, during that second season, I was going through a bad phase with depression and everything. And so for me, it was like, does hockey even make me happy anymore? Like, who am I outside of this sport? And so I definitely questioned it too, because I was like, there's no point in me transferring to another school if it's not going to be the ideal situation. Because I kind of liked everything outside of hockey. I just didn't love the hockey piece, but that was such a big part of my life that I was like, maybe I just don't like it. So I did question it a lot during that time. And it was definitely a challenge transitioning from RIT to BU, because then I felt like I didn't belong at a top 10 school because I was at a bottom 10 school. So
I can get that. Yeah. So, I mean, you went from something small to something big. And while you were there, you guys accomplished a lot as teams. Walk me through just getting over that one personal hurdle, but also being able to have so much success at this huge school.
So I think for me, I was very, very fortunate to have the coaching staff that I did. I was very fortunate to have the teammates that I did as well. I didn't know anybody whenever I transferred to BU, and normally I know a player on every single team. And so for me, it was like a whole new environment. I was like in the city, and so all the classes were way harder. I had to retake so many courses, but in the end, it was definitely worth it. And I think, seeing my teammates show up every single day and how much they were giving their best every single day made me want to give my best and even more. And so I think I just put my head down for that first year and did everything that I could. Like, I knew my strengths were, and I asked like old coaches that knew me really well. I was like, look, I'm having confidence issues right now. What was I really good at before I came here? And then they dove into it, and then I was like, oh, okay. And I made myself a highlight video, all those things, like stay confident and like into my own zone. And, throughout the season, I just kept getting really good feedback from the coaches and my teammates. So it was really funny how we kind of switched from my junior year, which was, I think we won 14 games, which like isn't bad, but it's not great.
It's not great. It could be better.
And then the next season we come and we win 21 games and we win a bean pot for the first time ever.
So for those who don't know what a bean pot is, let's explain that, because I recently found this out whenever you guys were talking about, and Zoe was going crazy over it. Like, what is that?
It's basically the national championship for Boston schools. And so it's Harvard, Boston University, Boston College, and Northeastern. And it's a 2-game series, which is the craziest thing.
That's it?
They hadn't won it in 38 years. So they had never won at the varsity level. They had won at the club level before.
Okay.
And we had the same amount of beanpot titles as Brown University, who only got to play one singular season in the beanpot. So it was pretty embarrassing.
It's not great. It's not great.
But when we won, it was top notch.
It's good. Yeah, it's a good moment. Why bean? Why bean pot? Do we know?
It has to do with big beans. Like, they call it Boston Beantown.
Okay, I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
probably why. I'm like sitting here thinking of like a cauldron with a beans in it, and I'm like, why am I like envisioning that? And it's just weird. It's a weird thing. Okay, going back, I think that it's really admirable, especially for a lot of female athletes in any sport, because I can imagine transferring to a new school, an entirely new environment. You're already going to be in uncomfortable situations, but on top of that, you're playing a female sport that it's popular, but not widely popular as other female sports are. It's like, how did you just navigate that, and have you been able to really use that knowledge to help anyone else that you've met along the way?
Yeah, I mean, we're always looking to grow the women's game, especially women's hockey. And I'm a huge female athlete fan, like of all sports, so like basketball, soccer, you name it, I go to those games. But I think for hockey, it's really hard for like the visibility aspect, just because one, we're like fully covered head to toe. There's not really many sports that are like that.
True.
And there's also just like the lack of personality, I would say, in the sport. I mean, if you see NHL walk-ins, like they are the smallest major league in the States.
1,000%.
So it's really challenging whenever they don't already have a big fan base, and then we don't have a big fan base because of that. So it kind of trickles down. But I think it's been getting a little bit better. I've been, every time I talk to another pro women's hockey player, I'm like, you guys have to be on social media. That is the only way we can grow. And like, you look at the WNBA players, I am so impressed. Some of them have millions of followers.
They've killed it.
They've done
such
such a good job.
Killed it.
And so like, I always look to them. I look to their walk-in fits, like all those pictures, everything adds to the experience of women's sports. And whenever we have the same level of professionalism as the men's, that's when we get more respect.
Yep.
And even, I actually have a story from this weekend.
Okay.
And it's not a good one.
Oh, perfect. I love slander.
So I was playing in this tournament. It's all boys.
Yeah.
And it's like my second time ever playing roller hockey. I'm not bad. I'm not the best either. And I know that. And we were playing this first game. I told you before. It was like we got to the rink 5 minutes before we had to be on the rink. Yeah. And we just started playing right away. And this guy comes down and he like hits the post, it hits the back of the goalie. He thinks that it goes in the net, so he celebrates. And I'm like, it didn't go in. And he's like, what did you say? I was like, it didn't go in. And the ref was like, no goal. And then he looks at me, he's like, you don't belong out here. This is a man's sport. You should get off. And I was like, can I curse on this?
Yes, you can.
I was like, what the fuck did you just say? And he was like, you don't belong out here. I was like, oh, I'll kick your ass right now. 1v1 me. Let's go. And the ref just started. And I'd never been so frustrated in my entire life, because nothing like that had happened since I was in, 12 years old.
Yeah, we're too old for this. Like, calm down, dude.
Yeah. I'm like, first of all, we're in the same division and I'm better than you. And I know I am. I don't care. I don't even play roller hockey. Like, what's your excuse?
This is literally not even the sport you specialize in. Like,
exactly.
See, you don't run into, I'm actually shocked you said that. You don't run into that a lot in different matchups like that. Do you play a lot of, like, on men's teams?
I play a lot of beer league
on
men's teams.
Naturally.
Obviously, growing up, I played a lot of boys hockey, but those, I'm not going to fault them for them just being ignorant, because they didn't know any better back then. But now they should know. I would say I get a lot more on social media. Like in the very beginning of like the first 2 or so years that I was doing it, I was getting roasted by kids.
Oh, yeah.
And adults. They're like, nobody cares. Like, don't post. I
and
was
it's like, why are you commenting that? That's what I'll never understand. I'm like, you're taking the time to write out how bad I am at my job. Why? What do you want me to do?
Literally.
Do you want me to take that and be like, you know what? You're right. I'm going to quit now. What?
Yeah.
Like, what do you want from that?
Yeah. Or like, does it make you feel better to post that? Because you're the only one doing anything bad. It's like negative energy from you. And I won't be taking that on, so you can have it.
Every now and then I'll get like a little like just in a bad mood, and I'll just comment back like overly sarcastic. Like, thank you so much for your feedback, heart. Like, just to really like dig in, because it's like, I don't understand the point. And especially with people that are playing a professional sport anywhere, at any level. I'm like, you try it.
Yeah.
Like, imagine if someone came up to your cubicle every single day and was like, hey, by the way, you're sucking right now.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as yelling at an athlete.
I know. And I get comments too on social media, like whenever I put out a tutorial or like any video, like they're like, oh, you're actually not doing that right. And they try to offer me tips. I'm like, excuse me, I've been coaching for over 10 years. I've been playing for over 20 years. I've played professional hockey. Like my resume is way bigger than yours will ever be. Don't give me tips.
And these people have like profile pictures that are taken like this. Yeah, it's just
or
like
it's
in the
not
front
even
lawn.
them.
Or not even them. It's like Star Wars me. I'm like,
accounts.
God bless. I hate people. Anyways, back to more positive topics. We digress. I'm not bitter at all. Let's talk about the warehouse, which is why we are here. So how did you get contacted by Johnboy Media to come play in a random warehouse in New Jersey?
Yeah, that part was a little sketchy. I was like, a warehouse?
Isn't it? It's just like, hey, it's under bridge. It's just look away from all the creepy shit.
Yeah, I actually got contacted through DMs. I don't know if I saw it for like a week or something. I was like scrolling through my message requests.
So
like,
funny. Chelsea said the same thing. She didn't. She was like, I saw the blue check and thought it was important after like a week.
Yeah, I saw it and I was like, yeah, I don't know. And then I think whenever we were messaging back and forth, they're like, oh, will you be available August? I was like, I think it's like April right now. I was like, I have no idea where I'm going to be in August. So.
I don't know where I'm going to be tonight. Like
exactly. So yeah, that's how I got contacted, email. And then I don't even know if there was a phone call. I think we just went back and forth on email.
And you just showed, they just, fingers crossed she showed up. Hopefully she's here. Did you know anyone that was going to be here?
I didn't know anyone except for Chelsea.
Okay.
And then I knew Pavs was going to be here.
Okay.
And then, yeah, other than that, I think it was,
okay.
I didn't really know.
What was your first impression walking into the warehouse? Walking up and in.
Well, actually, seeing the before pictures, I was like, whoa, how did this happen?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's insane.
It was really cool. Well, when we were walking in, I was like, what is this place? I sent my location to my friends.
Yes. You can never be too sure. You had warehouse in, and it's like, okay, someone needs to track me just for a moment.
Exactly.
I get it.
Yeah, but the warehouse was super awesome. And I think just the energy inside of it, oh my God. I was telling, I don't know who I was telling, somebody here. And I was like, I've never felt this competitive playing a sport outside of ice hockey.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I try to explain to people, and we won't give away any information or spoilers, but I try to explain to people that you can watch it on a screen and you can see the excitement, but when you are in it, even I'm not even playing, and I'm like sliding like side information to you guys. I'm like trying to like scheme. I'm so invested because it's so hard not to be. It's like, okay, we're gonna like ride and die together this weekend, sweating, maybe passing out, lots of heat, borderline heat strokes, but we figured it out.
Yeah.
We figured it out. Yeah, the energy in there is always wild. You can't explain it.
Oh yeah, and even I didn't know what to expect. I watched. I think the night before, I ended up watching a game. I didn't even do that before I confirmed. I was like, yeah, I'll do it.
You know what? I probably should like see what I'm doing.
Yeah. I was like, wait, what are the rules to floorball? I don't even know. And then obviously when you start playing, like it's really intense the way the game starts. I don't know. Are you able to say that?
Yeah. They start with shootout.
Yeah, it starts with a shootout, and when you're going, like, especially if you're the first one to go and everybody's watching you, I got really nervous.
You're like, oh, everyone's staring. Like, oh.
I was like, if I miss, I'm a loser.
Then why am I'm never invited back.
Yeah, exactly.
No, you did great. You played great. You were definitely one of the best players in the warehouse. So how long have you known Pavel before this?
I met him the weekend before, or maybe I met him a month before that.
Okay, so like a recent friendship. What is he to your world?
He is. No, I was just texting him. I can't be that nice to him. I was just say, oh, he's the Wayne Gretzky. No, he's not. He does really phenomenal trick shots.
Okay.
And obviously he does like some funny bits too, but it's like him and two other guys that are really high up. And
nice.
I think a lot of people also follow him for like his training tutorials and everything along those lines. The ones where he's not joking, they actually follow him because he has some bit of like knowledge in hockey.
Decent. Yeah.
Yeah, he's all right.
Decent. So what was your impression of your teammates?
My teammates. I love my teammates. We got D, Zoe, and Jack.
Yep.
Jack was a little quiet, but he always gave really good one-liners. Or, like,
oh yeah, he's so quiet. He's like sneaky, like slowly becomes one of your favorite people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then Zoe, all over the place.
All over the place.
Zoe and I have been chatting ever since the game. So
I love that.
Yeah, he's so funny. And then D, obviously, we did not think he was going to be that good.
The fact that, one, you guys like blended so well together. It was seamless almost instantly. I also love the fact that you and D are like completely different people on and off. Like Zoe's still smiling, Jack's still like goofy. You and him are like, I'm gonna kill someone, and then the second it's over, it's like, hey man, great game.
Yes. I could not be more competitive.
I love it. No, all of the women on each team were without a doubt the most competitive people out there.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. So I kind of want to transition into women in sports and end on that note. So this is actually the first time that we have had a female on every single team whenever we do something warehouse related, which is huge and why I'm doing all of these interviews with you guys. So going from that, how do you see, I'm going to ask advice. How do you see us continuing to implement that into sports like a baseball or like handball or whatever it may be that we play in the warehouse?
I mean, there's plenty of girls that play pro baseball now. Not plenty, but there's some that it's growing.
You're not wrong.
So you could always bring in their own team or add one sub or something along those lines. Start small, add some players here and there, and then as soon as they start proving themselves, which it won't be hard to do because the women always rule the game.
They really do, man.
Yeah. But I think even, next year, when the films, it could be a full girls team, and then we dominate and we win the whole thing.
That would be, oh my God, that would be so awesome. I would love that more than anything. Well, going into your profession more so, where do you plan on taking what you're doing right now? How do you plan on continuing to elevate not only your professional career, but also just women in sports?
So it's funny you ask that. There's like some things in the works that I don't really want to talk about right here, right now until things are all finalized. But I've been a lifelong coach and a mentor. And so like one of the things is like obviously Female Athlete Society that I run, which is just a research space for female athletes to get anything on mental performance, mental health, physical training, stuff along those lines, stuff that I didn't have whenever I was growing up. And then another thing is obviously coaching the next generation of athletes. And so I'm always doing work with youth teams. I like to do it with like pro players, college players. Last week I was working with two of my old teammates from last year. So I was putting them through some drills and everything. And so I love being a skills coach, and I love basically moving around, talking to teams too. So when I was in Dallas, I was talking to some of their Dallas Elite girls down there, and then I went to some of their games. And it's just like for them to be able to see a face like that has been to where they want to get to at some point, I think it's really important for us to do that. And so I'll probably continue moving along with social media, but I might be taking it in a different direction soon.
Okay. I like that. A nice little cliffhanger. What is your, as vaguely as you can without giving away anything, what's your end goal? Like, what is like top tier dream that you could see yourself doing for, like, what's the biggest, highest peak that you think you could hit?
I would definitely like to have my own foundation.
Okay.
I've always loved doing charity work, but I think for me, I'd want to do something along the lines of having a charity for mental health, and then obviously doing fundraisers with it and throughout the year. But I do want to change how the NCAA views mental health and student athletes, because when I was in school, I didn't really know what my resources were, like where to get them. I didn't know who I could talk to. And even when I would ask for help, they didn't have the amount of resources that were necessary for all 500 plus athletes.
That's crazy.
Not even including like the 30 other thousand students that are definitely going through something.
Everyone.
And so if I can just help in like that one small space with the athletes at the D1, D3, any collegiate level, I think that would be definitely end goal for me.
I want to end on the topic of mental health because you've talked about it a lot, and I know that you've made social media posts and you are very vocal about it, which I think is great and phenomenal. When it comes to, because I honestly didn't know about the NCAA not having resources in that regard. Why do you think that is?
I think it's been challenging for athletes already to speak up about what they're going through, let alone like other people. But whenever you're in that spotlight, you're dealing with so much pressure. And so I think about it whenever I was there me and all of my teammates were going through something. We were doing probably 20 plus hours of training a week. Then we were doing 20 plus hours of school. Then some of us worked part-time jobs or volunteered or were in clubs. And I did all of those. And so I just remember how hard it was for me to ask for help in that time because I didn't want to be viewed differently.
As weak.
Yeah, I didn't want to be viewed as weak, and I didn't want my coaches to think that I couldn't take that course load or like the workload that we all had. And so I felt like whenever I was going through all of that, I was giving up on my teammates if I didn't give everything. And so I think it kind of pours into like the NCAA at like the institutional level where they don't necessarily think that there's a lot going on. Now there's obviously more studies that are coming out, but they're still reacting to what's happening because it's hard to be proactive at this point in time with all the students that they have, everybody that they have to look after. It's hard to cover all of that.
It is.
But I think there could definitely be more that's done in terms of like guest speakers. They could have at least 5 full-time, like that should be mandatory. 5 full-time mental health professionals to like some level.
1,000%.
And that's like that's 1 to 100 ratio for student athletes.
And because that's the thing I don't think people realize. I mean, I grew up a college football fan and went to Tennessee. But at the end of the day, when you zoom out, that person on the field playing that sport is a kid. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what a lot of people forget is that, when I was 19 or 20 years old, like I was going through stuff, but I was going through it alone in my room or with my few friends, not under a spotlight in front of everyone, dealing with public criticism who don't know you at all. And that is what I guess is more so shocking to me, that is not a necessity that these universities or programs believe it to be. Like they'll have tutors that'll travel to make sure that they can get their tests done on the road or before a baseball game or whatever it may be, but they can't have someone who can ask if you're okay.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of crazy too, because as soon as I got out of college, that's when I started to feel more comfortable talking about everything going on. And I started emailing every single athletic director. I know, I emailed.
I love it.
It was like 25 from like the top big schools. Yeah. And so I think one of them that was doing a really good job was Ohio State. And they only had 4 full-time.
For all athletics?
Yes, for all athletics. And that was the best that I found. I emailed Harvard. Harvard didn't even want to message me back. And they were like, here's a pamphlet. It's like same exact thing that Maryland did. It's like, even talking to my alma mater, I was like, we have to do more for these student athletes. Like right now we are failing them. And it's not fair to them. It's not fair to their performance. And it breaks my heart because I had guys coming up to me like with either eating disorders or that were struggling, that had like tried to commit suicide, and they like made it out, thankfully. But it was like, how many other close calls were there before? Like, how many more are there going to be before they step in?
Yeah, and I think that goes to a lot of it. It's not just female sports who are struggling with it. It's also like male sports, more so probably than female sports, because it's scientifically proven that, no offense to all the guys or the men, but like men don't have as much of an emotional grasp on their feelings. And that is something they learn at a later part in their life. But like putting all of that together, like I can imagine that is something that could be so detrimental to a student athlete in ways that I probably can't even imagine.
Yeah. And I think about it too. I think there was a football player had a big hit on, was it Colorado State?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And everyone was berating him.
Oh, my God. This guy's like death threats.
Yeah.
Straight up.
So I don't know how they would expect something like that to take a toll on their mental health, but I don't think people are realizing that when they comment those posts. And so, like, that's why, I mean, it doesn't bother me when people comment those things to me on social media, because I'm like, whatever. It's their life. Right. They're not affecting me. But, like, he's probably receiving thousands and thousands of that, and on a way worse level than what I could have gotten. And so I'm like, geez, these guys, like, they are just getting it. Way harder, not way harder than female athletes, but I would say it is a little bit harder for them.
I think it's different, right? It's different. I think it's completely different. I think females are thrown in the misogynistic type of comments, and men are thrown in the, are you showing any emotions? You're weak.
Exactly.
And that is something I hope, now I'm going to go down an internet rabbit hole, because that's something that I hope to see some sort of change in is just more so the approach of emotions actually being acceptable. Because I think that's the biggest thing in sports that we push, is that like emotions shown in sports on any level are either shocking, frowned upon, or weird. And it's like, what?
I know. It's like a part of sports.
It's literally a part of it. It's also you're a human being. Like, what?
Yeah. I can't. I love like the topic of mental health just because obviously it still needs to be talked about more. Yeah. But it really does break my heart whenever I see like these athletes reaching out to me, like grown adults reaching out to me. And I'm like, there's so much as a society that we need to change in order to get the topic of mental health at like the top of people's minds, and to where they're not scared to ask for help anymore or ask for resources or anything along those lines.
Well, it can be just a normal conversation. It's not like an uncomfortable closed door. Like, you know, it can be like yeah, I struggle with that and I struggled with this and I still deal with that, or whatever it may be. Like, because I think that's the biggest thing, is that stigma of mental health being an issue is slowly going away, but habits are hard to break, especially when it comes to stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing that I do with my friends is I always ask, like, how are you doing mentally? And
same.
I like to specify, because I'm like, how are you doing? Is like, oh yeah, I'm doing good. How are you? I'm like, no, how are you doing in your mental space, your mental capacity, and just like overall life in general? And I think that's how you can have like a little bit of a deeper conversation to start. But yeah, we got to ask different questions.
Oh, 1,000%.
No more surface level stuff.
No more surface level. No, I agree. And I think every single person here, out there, wherever it may be, has dealt with something mentally tough in some form or fashion. Some have just dealt with more things. Others have dealt with harder things, whatever it may be. But I think that if everyone kind of starts viewing those problems or issues as like tools that they can use to help someone else, as cheesy as that sounds, but I think about that often, whether it's an athlete coming up to you or a little girl coming up to me, it's like, okay, maybe this is why I struggled through that stuff. Like maybe this is why like I made it out of the XYZ or whatever it may be, is to be able to help that person.
Your pain becomes your purpose.
Exactly.
That's what I always say.
I love that. Well, on that note, I think that is a great place to end this conversation. Thank you for sitting down and talking with me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Perfect. Be sure to check out the Floorball tournament coming out soon, guys.